we've always been kind of weird as farmers, as we've just been weird as farmers, as ranchers, whatever we've been in, we're, like you say, curious. And so unafraid of trying something different if we see value in it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Force of Nature podcast. Today's special guest is Sadie Collins from Highland Harmony Farm based in Montana. Sadie and I are both on the Create program, and she is an absolute weapon of a human being. Today I wanted to share a bit more about her farming, their transition into regenerative agriculture, and what makes her tick. We talk a lot about community, and I think this is a really driving force behind what makes Sadie the woman she is. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sadie, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about where you're from and what you do?
I live in Montana in the U.S., just north of Yellowstone National Park, and we have a dryland farm where we grow pulses and ancient grains and then some more modern wheat. Grew up farming and, near and dear to my heart.
That's awesome. So I think we should probably make a quick distinction between farming and ranching for those that aren't from the US. What's the difference?
To an American, or Northern American anyway, if you say you're a rancher, you've got cattle or sheep or something along those lines, mainly cattle. And then if you're a farmer, you are, you've got a plow or, you've got crops.
Cool. Do you want to give us a bit of a background on what it's like farming in Montana? It's very different from what I thought it would be like when I visited early or late last year.
What's different?
I would say that 40-day growing period, that's pretty crazy to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, you get down by the park and it gets pretty short. We had 75 last year between frosts, which is short. Normally we're about 90 days. So people who say, oh, you should do cover crops after your wheat crop, it's not going to be alive for very long.
Yeah, that's pretty a tight time frame. So you, with your farm, you've changed to regenerative practices over time. Has that been one of the hard points? Is that cover cropping? Is like people are suggesting things that work in other areas that don't work in your area? Yeah.
Gosh, up here trying to do it without cattle is really difficult. There's not much rainfall. We get 13.5 inches. I don't know how many centimeters that is, but it's not a lot. And then with that short growing season, some of these things that people like Rick Clark, can have this nice stand of ryegrass to flop down and then plant into that after they've terminated it. That's not going to happen here. I mean, you could get rye to grow maybe 6 inches if you're really lucky before you flop it over, but that isn't going to cover the soil, not in the same way. So we're limited by the amount of growth and that we can get out of our short time period and our little tiny bit of water.
That's cool. Would that be your biggest issue that you're facing with your farm at the moment, is just those growing seasons, or is there other things that are happening through this kind of regenerative phase that you're going through?
I would say the biggest drag is mindset.
Yeah.
So our farm is my folks and me, and then we've had different hired men and girls over the years. And my folks both went to a land grant university, and I did too for a while. Of course, I went in English and photography, but they went in ag, and it's just really cemented in your head that you have to do it a specific way, and letting go of herbicide for the purpose of keeping your field clean so it looks nice. And the fear, they really pound the fear of weeds into you, that they're going to steal the space from the crops, and reduce your yield. And then there also the protein levels that you have to achieve in order to do wheat, which has been our main cash crop, is just like hard red wheats. And you have to make a certain protein level to be able to sell it as human food. Otherwise it's feed wheat for half as much or so. And it's difficult in this transitional phase. Well, it's definitely difficult if you're still conventional and you try to do it without fertilizer, cold turkey. I don't know how you could get high protein levels, but even in this transition, it's been a stretch to make protein on stuff. But in places where we've brought cows over top of cover crops and then planted the following year we have seen a little bit of a difference already. And that wasn't even, we're just getting into, better adaptive grazing this year. We're going to try to hit it really hard and be more involved because we've used other people's cattle in the past. And now we've got some of our own. And then, yeah.
That's cool. So what was the original catalyst for your parents and yourself to go down the regenerative route instead of just staying on what you were doing before?
Oh, my dad worked at what was the SCS office, the NRCS now, the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Yeah, here. And that was when I was around 10. He spent a couple years working some with them, and the idea of soil conservation really stuck with him. And so we quickly moved to some things like chem fallow, which, in the regenerative space is ick, of course, but that was with the purpose of not disturbing. We thought we're not disturbing the soil as much doing that, and more minimum tillage. So we've already been kind of thinking along those lines about conservation. And then my dad was always really into continuing education as a farmer, and going and listening to people speak at conferences and things like that. They had the opportunity to hear John Kemp speak, and they'll go to Washington. They'll go a couple states away to listen to people if they think it's, valuable. And just word of mouth, I swear, out of these people who are plugging into this science and practicing, different things, and conversations with other farmers about what the heck would that actually work. And so it's been from meeting people and listening to people in real life.
And just taking from their experiences, and I guess curiosity got the best of them.
Yeah. Well, we've always been kind of weird as farmers, we've just been weird as farmers, as ranchers, whatever we've been in, we're, like you say, curious. And so unafraid of trying something different if we see value in it.
We've got to embrace the weirdness, as farmers, get curious. So what is the mission, I guess, behind Highland Harmony Farms at the moment? What's driving you guys forward?
Well, since we did ranching for profit, this is a lot easier to answer because I made everybody sit down. I think we want to, for me in particular, it's like I want to see the land flourish that is under our care, and see the plants that are just, these badass plants coming out of the ground. And then now that we've got a tiny herd of cows coming that are going to be ours that we're taking care of. I mean, I want them to be healthy. Yeah. Well, the other part of it is that we're pretty committed to educating people about it because we see how, what profound changes can happen and how it can help everyone. And I mean, the entire earth can benefit, and human health, plant health, animal health, the whole works. And so educating people has been, something that we've kind of picked up as we're doing this stuff. People ask, and we're more than happy to share the funky things that we're doing and why they're important. And so I would say, yeah, education, and then just for that, definitely for the health of our own land.
That's awesome. So is that education like farmer to farmer, or is that also to the wider community who buy your products?
I'd say both. I'm trying to start up. We've got some leads on starting up a cohort in Montana for crop growers. There's quite a bit of action towards getting ranchers together right now in Montana. There's a lot of options, but crop growers, not so much. I mean, up in this high, dry environment, it's a difficult process. And so it takes somebody who's really doesn't mind the risk to get into it. And so they're fewer and farther between, but I'm trying to make an effort to get people together so that we have somebody to bounce ideas off of and share experiences. And that's in the works.
And to the wider community, are you doing some education in that space as well?
Yeah. So Montana, the NRCS and the Conservation District put together a yearly conference for farmers and ranchers. And this is, I think this was the 4th year, and we got to go and speak. And it's fantastic. We've had Gabe Brown and John Kemp and, all the names, or most of the names, have come and spoke. And I think, I'm not sure the people sitting in the audience, we're up to about, it's pretty average to get about 400 people come to this thing, but it's like they are so lucky to be sitting in the room listening to these people with this firsthand information on how to do the stuff. And I don't know, we're really blessed to have such a robust community right here in Montana. And people are willing to come and share stuff here because there's a lot of potential for growth in the regenerative space. I mean, obviously there's a ton of beef in Montana, and there's also a ton of wheat production and legumes, and beef is getting worked towards right now. And that's what my hope is, to really help drive the regenerative space into the wheat and legume production too.
That's cool. So what's your plan with that? Is that to get the growers together and then kind of start selling a product where you all mill towards, or is it just trying to get general consensus of what you're doing here that works?
I think the education has to come first. You know, there are some specialty crop sales kind of stuff going on, but it's not, I don't think it makes enough money to get big crop producers tripping over themselves to get in line to do that. I think they've been, you know, conditioned to do things in a very linear, simple fashion, that, and getting into more like direct sales or specialty sales is not, it takes a lot of thought and a lot of effort, a lot of what ranching for profit would call WAPB, working on the ranch, working, you know, messing around with computers and phone calls. And you gotta be a little more willing to communicate with other humans in order to do any kind of direct sales. And that's not the model that they've been taught in crops. It's very, you get in your tractor, you do your thing, combine it, stick it in a truck and haul it to the elevator. And you could do most of that by yourself. It's a little bit more about bringing people back together. That's why I'm really excited about the idea of doing a cohort for crop growers. You know, ranchers have their brandings up here. I know that sounds like something small and simple and maybe not that meaningful, but there isn't anything like that really for, you know, if somebody custom cuts your wheat or whatever, you're not necessarily going to go have a party with them afterwards. You're not going to socialize with them. There's that missing component that helps change flow through communities better. You know, if there's community, which there's not really with the crop growers compared to the ranchers.
Yeah, I reckon that's pretty similar here as well. Like our stations are probably similar to your large ranches, and they've all kind of got their brands, which are the stations that the people are familiar with. But there wouldn't be that many brands, you could say, for your equivalent of farming, which is their cropping guys, unless they were doing like a value add product on the other side of it. And that's very few and far between here as well. So if you were to try and convince one of these bigger guys to start the transition phase, what do you think has been the most successful thing that you've had happen so far in your journey?
I'll tell you when it happens. I don't know. I guess I would say I haven't had the opportunity to convince. It's in the works. I don't know. This is just the very beginning of my dad saying that he wants to do anything organic and like purposefully. And the only way I feel like that came about is just repetitive education about why and how you aren't going to get to a regenerative. I mean, how important it is to soil life to let go of chemicals. You know what I mean? That the whole purpose of this regenerative thing is soil life. And yeah.
It's quite a paradigm shift to be able to let go of that chemical use, because it's so ingrained in how to be a successful and profitable farming. You need these things, like you were saying more about the weeds earlier, that they're actually kind of stealing from the main crop. And I think that's just ingrained in people for, it almost seems like generations now. So that to go away and start reducing those, it's almost like you're thinking straight away that you're going to be less profitable or your crop's going to fail because you're going to have so many more weeds. Has that been your experience in the transition? That
there's been more weeds?
Yeah. You mean? Or do you define them as weeds still?
Well, if you want to speak English in this state, you call it something besides a weed, they're going to say, what? No. I don't really have the answer to that yet because we're doing it right now. I mean, literally. Well, I'll just tell you, we have done some fields every once in a while where, we'll just withhold the herbicide, and because I have so many things going on, I'm not necessarily the person that's going to combine it. And so I don't know. I never hear about that. I never hear about the weeds took over. It's just when they get caught up in the weed thing, it's when the stuff is coming up, you know what I mean? And that's when it really hurts the ego, is when plants are in the younger stages. And I think if the soil life is that screwed up that the weeds are thriving, the reason that the wheat or whatever isn't doing good isn't because the weeds are there. It's because the soil's crap. You know what I mean? And sorry, so it's like that one's a hard one for me to answer.
I think you summed it up there. It's the weeds they're a symptom of the root cause, and that's why the wheat's not being successful, as you say, because the place the environment you're trying to grow it in is not suitable, really, you could say.
Yeah.
So speaking of wheat, you are very passionate about milling your own whole wheat flour. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that and why you choose to do that process?
Well, the mill itself, that's been my dad's idea. I mean, he's always he grew up in California on, what seems more like a food farm. They had prunes and grapes and stuff, and they, you could walk out in the field and grab a handful of whatever was on the plant, shove it in your mouth and eat it. And then up here, if you got cows and wheat, it doesn't quite equate the same way. You're growing a commodity, and if it's if you got cattle, you'll butcher one at the end of the year and throw it in the freezer. And I think they grasp it just a little bit faster than the crop growers, because that goes in a bin and you never see it again. Nobody, used to clean their own wheat and grind it, and still, I don't think anybody hardly does. But yeah, so we started with that, and probably 5 years ago or whatever, Dad got a little mill, and then just sold it at our farmers markets. And we've been moving up since then. And he ordered a mill from Austria that does like 100 pounds an hour. Still not like factory size by any means. And that's enough to supply our farmers markets and, a few bakeries around, and then restaurants and things like that. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever step into the factory type space. I just don't think that's us, because there's too few of us. I'm an only, and there's mom and dad, and then we have like part-time help a little bit beyond that. So yeah.
That's cool. So you to change the process in the way that you mill your wheat is a lot different from what we'd normally get from our flour sale on the supermarket shelf. Do you want to explain why that is, or what the benefit of that is?
Yeah. So there's quite a difference. A grain kernel is a perfect package that comes with all the nutrition for a baby plant to start, for an animal to eat. It has its B vitamins and its folic acid and iron and everything in it, or on it. It's around on the outside of the kernel is the bran, and down there's the germ, and all those hold the essential, or like fatty acids and things like that, are all contained in there pretty much. And the endosperm in the center of the wheat seed is where the carbs are. And, if you stick that in the ground and it grows, it uses up those carbs, kind of does the sugar thing and uses that to grow with. But what humans are doing is when you buy a bag of white flour at the grocery store, you're buying just that center carb part, minus all the goodies that nature gave you in that wrapper, the bran, and then in the germ that get pulled off in the industrial system. The reason they do that is to keep it, make it last longer on the shelf. But in doing so, you remove all that stuff. And so I think it's in the 1930s in the United States, people were eating a lot of this white flour that had been stripped of everything. And it was kind of like nutritional value of eating paper. Maybe not exactly, but you're just filling up on nothing and not getting the nutrition. And they said, we need to add some the stuff that they took off. Only they're going to do it. They did it in a form that is like shelf stable. Trouble with that is they're not only are they made of things like coal tar and acetone, hydrochloric acid, and ammonia, which is not necessarily human food in small quantities or whatever. It doesn't kill you for sure, but also it doesn't get digested the same way as the natural version that's already on the wheat kernel. So it's just, they're trying to save time and feed people quickly, which, really was important in the 30s. They're trying to keep people from starving to death or getting pellagra, like deficiencies from certain B vitamins. And, but now we have the bandwidth to grind our own wheat. I mean, we're doing it. And then you get the natural version that your body knows how to use appropriately. And you're not creating a waste product that then has to be fed somewhere else and da-da-da-da-da.
It's super interesting. And do you think that kind of plays into the reason why people are now struggling to process, say, things like breads and that, or pastas, because it has become almost over-processed rather than just utilizing the original form?
Yeah, there's several factors that play into it. There's the fact that, it was in like the 50s, they really started playing with wheat production and how could we breed wheat to amp up the production. And in doing so, they created kind of these shorter varieties that have a higher yield, but they kind of lost some of their brains. What they lost was their gut biota, however you say that, like how a plant's roots is its stomach. And these newer varieties of wheat don't associate with microbes in the soil as well as some of the older varieties, like the Corsan, Emmer, Einkorn, Spelt. They actually, if you put them in the soil next to each other in the same soil, it appears that some of these ancient grains haven't been tampered with as much, have a little more, they still have that ability to make friends with microbes in the soil and mine out more things easier and protect themselves with better rhizome sheath and all that kind of stuff. But so there's one hit against them, against modern wheat, is that they're stupid. Or they have stupid gut biome going on or forgotten.
So do you think that plays into the reason why people are struggling to digest wheat?
So you've got these stupid wheat plants that aren't taking things up naturally. They're being, since the 50s, they've been bred even further to be really good friends with urea and, fake nitrogen, or not, like synthetic fertilizers instead. And the quality of these plants, as far as, the proteins and minerals and whatnot that you would get out of an older wheat 100 years ago, it's not going to be the same. They're kind of like a shell of what wheat once was, is my understanding of it. And then you peel off all the good stuff and then you put bad stuff on it. And then they have bred some trying to create more of the glutens and gliadins or whatever they are, in order to make more stretch and stuff.
So are you finding that the wheat you're selling at the farmers markets, the people are seeking it out for those reasons, that they know it's that kind of those ancient grains that have all the good stuff in it? Sort of.
I know that's not a very exciting answer, but the answer is sort of.
How did you come to create the direct consumer side? What was the catalyst behind starting that and going to farmers markets?
Let me think. So around the time that my dad went into the NRCS, we did do a little bit of organic, and we had organic peas is what it was. We had a couple fields that were organic fresh peas, and we got crews of kids to come and pick them into boxes and then sent them off to restaurants and stuff. And that kind of, and we did the farmers market, and it was this different way of interacting with what you're doing. It had more meaning, than just throwing dried peas in a grain bin and hauling them off. It was a little bit more like I don't know, you felt a little bit better about yourself doing that. Probably didn't make as much money, but you did feel pretty good about yourself at the end of the day. And I don't know, it's just kind of we had a big long hiatus where we amped up acreage and worked our asses off trying to do thousands and thousands of acres, and and just got burnt out and not having any fun and just being kind of cranky, angry, loner people. And I don't, well, actually my dad cut his thumb off right before COVID, and we were kind of allowed to slow down at that point. And I was like, oh, okay. And he almost, I think he kind of gave me a little more rein with stuff, because he's overwhelmed. And that was kind of like this message of slow down. You're just pushing a little bit too hard. He stuck his hand into an auger anyway, yeah, he was trying not to let grain spill on the ground. It's like 2 pounds on the ground versus your entire thumb. Well, the thumb got put back on. Happy ending to that. But just this, it kind of forced this change in mentality a little bit. And then you combine COVID and then everybody wanted, sometimes you couldn't get what you wanted. And so people paid more attention to what was available locally. And I don't know. So that was kind of a catalyst too, for sure. Yeah.
And do you quite enjoy actually working with your customers and seeing them day to day? Because now you've got that kind of direct connection to them, whereas you didn't have that before.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think society, at least I don't know what you'd call first world society or whatever, has just become so isolated from each other in comparison to what it was 100 years ago. We don't interact as much. We don't make time to interact with people. And it's so important. I started a women's group here in our little bitty town because nobody hangs out, and man, through Create, I've definitely seen the value of having, people you're accountable to and that you talk to, and that it's demonstrated how much we need each other and what a huge benefit we get from interacting with each other on a regular basis, like human to human, not just, liking someone's post or saying something cute, that's very kind, but it's not the same. It doesn't do the same for you.
Absolutely. And I like to call it like finding your tribe, and Create for me kind of helped really make that idea come to life for me. Like I guess I had never really found my tribe before that. And since I've been probably back in New Zealand, it's amazing who comes out of the woodwork. And I think it draws people towards you because they see that you're aligned.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is pretty cool.
I know. I've definitely noticed the same thing that, I thought I was doing pretty good, but and then going to Create, it was like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to learn, especially about leadership, and like you say, I think once you are forced to get real and authentic and, practice integrity, people are drawn to you. And, if you keep practicing it, then what you have to give is worth more too, for sure. And yeah, people value that. I think they don't even know what's going on. And they're like, or, they have no idea that I'm in Create or what that is. But the difference has been huge as far as people just popping up and saying, hey, you want to help me with something? Or can I get your thoughts on this or whatever? Just, yeah.
I love that. And I think you've raised like an interesting point, which is how we have to practice to be like our authentic selves, which is actually just us being who we are and being showing our integrity, which is funny because it's like, this is just who we are, but we have to practice that to get back to being normal. And then people outside us are recognizing that that's happening, and it's like they're drawn to us. So why are we so scared to be our authentic selves? Because it actually brings people closer to us rather than being embarrassed about it. And I think people respect it as well, that you can be who you are, and that is a form of leadership, like you said as well.
Yeah, just being the person in the room who's not afraid to be afraid.
No, I think that's good. Like being afraid, being okay with being afraid, and like putting yourself out there. And that like people respect that massively.
Yeah.
And I think it gives people the space as well to think that they can start doing that as well, like dipping the toe in, getting a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, being okay with discomfort. Yeah, that nails it on the head, I think, for sure. That's something we've learned, that just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that you aren't going to be okay. Everything's still going to be okay, even if this is hard, even if I'm scared to death, even if I think I can't do it, it's going to be okay. Yeah. And the only way you're going to get any kind of faith in yourself is by failing and realizing you're going to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always thinking like, what's the worst that could actually happen if I put myself out there or do this? Like most of the time, it's the worst case scenario that you can think of is like almost impossible and happening. So,
Yeah.
but that's what we fixated on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke about leadership just before. You've got quite a few roles in your local community, so you're obviously a bit of a leader. Do you want to talk about any of those specifically? What's your favourite one that you like to do outside of the farm?
I don't know. I was going to say, on the farm, because it's so funny, because I'm like, can I say that?
Yeah.
The beginning of the day, my dad will wait and he'll call me and like check in. There's kind of like this nerves. And well, I guess it's the same way with my ladies group or whatever. I'm grateful to be in that role where, I see people feeling frightened or whatever, or they get caught up or whatever, and they look to me and they're like, like for reassurance. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you got this. It's going to be fine. And I think I've always had a little bit of that, but definitely going through Create that like amplified it and made me believe it, too, that it was going to be all right. I don't know. So I like all of them. I'm happy to slip into that role at any point. It's interesting though, because sometimes my ego will get in the way just a little bit. I'm human. And I'll be like, well, I want everybody to ask me everything everywhere I go. And then, or I'll be like, how come I'm not the final authority on something? It's like, well, maybe that's not my purpose, is to be the final authority. Maybe my purpose is to just be the one who's not afraid, or okay with being afraid. Like the reassurer, you know what I'm trying to say? That there's a lot of value in that, because you're like giving someone permission to move forward despite everything. And, they can't be their best selves if they are stuck in that fear. And so I guess I love my role as someone who helps them move forward past that, which, it is a leadership role, but you also got to get your ego out of the way and let them go, be in the Olympics or whatever the heck they're going to kick ass at. It's like, go do it. But I don't need to own that. I need to be able to, just do my part and step out of the way.
That's absolutely. And I think it's a pretty key role. Like you said, how I guess in the first world countries now, everyone doesn't have that sense of community, and you keep trying to bring people together and support them. And like for people who don't have that, that'll make a huge impact on their life. They've never had support like that, and someone who's, behind them, helping them go forward. That makes a massive difference to someone's, I guess, life trajectory, you could say. Yeah,
I used to, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I used to lament the fact I felt like I didn't have someone to do that enough for me. And, and so there's like the flip side of the coin is like, I need someone to boost me. If someone was like playing that role, blah, 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 then my life would have been different. But it's like you don't understand that you have the power to do that for yourself. And I think everybody does. It's just an unlearning of, I don't know if it's society or, whatever the dynamics are that does that. But I think everybody has the power to, step forward, at least somewhat, in that role to boost themselves and others.
Absolutely. And I think a key part of it is actually being that, your number one supporter of yourself, like actually loving yourself and realizing how much you can achieve, as well as looking for that. So you're not always looking for that external validation to do things before you can actually start doing them. Do you think that's probably one of your biggest takeaways from doing the Create program, is recognizing that you are your own biggest supporter as well?
Yeah. You should see my bathroom mirror. I have this gigantic bathroom mirror, and it was just covered with stuff that I've written that, somebody, in our group has said, and, or a coach or whatever. And yeah. All right. Here's a bomb for you. My new favorite one is get up and fuck up. It's like, that is your job. You get up and you screw up. You're going to screw up and keep freaking moving. And yeah, I think if it didn't have that piece, if Create didn't have that piece, I would have learned, everything about soil health for certain, because that's surely in there, but I wouldn't have the confidence to share it. And it's like, what use is it if it's just plugged in my head and nobody's listening because I'm too scared of sharing something that someone might rebuff? It's like, get up and say it, whether they think it's stupid or not.
Exactly. That provides a lot of power as well. In doing that, is once you start doing that a few times, like practicing it, you realize that it's not actually that scary to stuff up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, there's so much power in failure. Really, yeah. It's like that's how you learn fast.
Yeah. And I reckon once you have that kind of mindset shift, you like I get a little bit excited about failure, like, because I know I'm just going to grow a bit quicker.
I know.
I'm going to get to where I go quicker if I just fail and do it fast and just keep moving.
Yeah, I know. I started in our church group, I started playing the mandolin. I've had a mandolin forever, but I've been afraid to take it to church and play because I didn't want to go through that phase where I just, sucked bad. And, but I started doing that this winter, and boy, you learn a lot faster. I mean, I was scared to death and I sound terrible and whatever, but it works. Get in the ring. Yep.
Got to be the man in the ring,
Yes. Yep.
It's all good to be sitting in the crowd and judging people, but when you're in the ring, you learn a lot better and you grow. Yeah,
I know. That's the difference between somebody looking at something on TikTok and the person who's doing it. I mean, not to bash people looking at TikTok, because that is what we're... That's like the poor conventional farmers right now. You can't bash them. Good grief. It's just change is happening, and that's good.
Absolutely. And everyone's just doing the best they can with the knowledge that they've got. And most of the time, It's if those guys had some more knowledge and education, they would change things that within their own system that will hopefully make them more successful and resilient as well. So it's very easy to judge, isn't it? But we're all on the same journey. It's just we're at different levels of where we're at.
Yeah.
So what's been your favourite thing so far with this Create program we're on?
My favourite part? The week there was fabulous. That was so hard. I mean, you saw me. I was a disaster. That hit me really hard, which was good. I needed to be hit hard. But being forced to answer questions you don't want to answer and stuff, and then the accountability and the continuing reassurance that it's okay. The community, for certain, is just like, yeah. It's easier to absorb, for me anyways, to absorb the information when there's a community too, I think. Because the amount of stuff we're learning is out of this world.
Community is a very common theme throughout this for you, and I can see how much it means to you. So where do you think...
I'm like, we can talk about wheat. If we talk about farmers getting together.
Yeah. No, I love it. You can tell what really drives you and makes you tick. Where do you think you'll be at the end of this program? What do you think will be you as a person coming out of it? Do anything change, or will you be doing your own consulting or creating more community groups?
I don't know. I feel like everybody I know is crawling into my lap and wants something. And so I'm not really sure. I think I would love to do some coaching for farmers for certain. And I don't know, we'll continue to do our milling and everything. And I don't know for sure. We got a couple months left. I can't believe how much has changed just in the few months that we've been in it. And so I was like, I have no idea. I might live in New Zealand in 6 months for all I know. I might be your neighbor.
Yeah, this is a good wheat growing area where I live, so
okay.
This would be where you'd move to.
Okay.
No, I love that. The endless possibilities that come out of it, it's pretty hard to define. So I generally round up by finishing with about 4 questions that I ask everyone. So what's the one thing that you would change about the agricultural industry?
Education. I get to teach next week. I get to go teach plant physiology or something. some piece of something to high schoolers. I have my daughter's at the university right now studying to be an ag teacher, and there's hardly a lick of regenerative ag in what she's learning, which is a bummer. One of her friends is student teaching at the high school closest to us, and I have this little tiny window where I get to talk to, I think there's 3 girls in the horticultural class. That's how small of a town I live in. Anyway, yeah. And I don't see it happening at the universities real soon. I think it's going to have to be word of mouth and community. So I think if there's one change I would love to see is just more, there's getting to be quite a bit, but even more community between farmers and ranchers, and that's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's no different here. It's probably still a few years away, if not more, from any regenerative stuff being taught at any of the universities here. Even though that it seems that the generation coming through are definitely interested in learning about it. The want's there. It's just maybe they're trying to figure out who would be the best to teach it, or how they can incorporate it into the current programs.
Or who's paying for their salary.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to say that. Sorry.
Yeah, you can say whatever you like.
This week I had at the farmer's market, I had one lady said, she teaches at one of the local universities, or she did. She might be retired now, but she said, yeah, I don't see how they're going to be able to teach that, because I'm pretty sure one of the big chemical companies is who pays their salary. And I'm like, which, I mean, what else are they going to do? It's just the system is kind of wonky. So that's why I definitely say rely on each other as farmers. And yeah.
And generally you learn more from peer-to-peer farming, learning anyway, seeing it in someone's farm and how it works for them. They'll be honest with you how that, and they'll be honest what works and what doesn't.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're looking back, what would be one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Oh, this one's hard. That one I skipped when I looked at your list of questions. Oh God, I don't know. That's a tough one for me. My younger self, I don't know. I don't think I'm in that space yet where I feel like I know enough to give her any advice yet. Not yet.
Not yet?
Oh, I know, but okay, all right. I would say it's all going to be okay. That's what I would say. I said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. That's what I would say.
Love that. And what's something that excites you at the moment?
I don't know. I'm in love with all my new friends. I mean, what makes me wake up in the morning, or not makes me wake up, when I wake up in the morning, and sometimes I'll be a little bit down, or I have since COVID. And what perks me up is knowing that I have this group of humans that completely, it's not going to give up on me and not going to judge me. I don't know, just that I've been blessed to join a community and then start some new community from where I'm at, it's people. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. And finally, what is the force of nature to you?
Okay, so this is the one that I got up in the middle of the night and was scribbling. When I was younger, when I was 23, I went through treatment for anorexia. And I was kind of full of shame for, whatever reasons. I was so full of shame, I felt like I needed to withhold from myself. And, I've stopped the behaviors and stuff, but I still have had a really hard time just with shame in my life. Oh, sorry. And I think a force of nature would be forgiving myself in that I do need things. I do want things. What I wrote last night was a force of nature would be the fact that humans are predators, that I am a predator and I want and need things. And, I tried to not eat meat for a couple years as much as I could. And I don't really know why. I never did think cows were ruining the earth by any means or whatever, but I think it's still holding on to some of that residual shame and withholding, and I don't need that or whatever. And in the past 6 months or whatever, I've kind of leaned into just trying to believe that I deserve as much, as every other human for certain. And it's okay to take at the same time. And just that notion of, humans are predators. We do need meat. It's okay to lean heavily into nature. We have canines. Have a steak. Humans are made to eat steak. I don't know. That's just the reminiscings I had in the middle of the night. So I would say, yeah, humans are a force of nature. Let myself be human.
I love that. That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with us, Sadie. That's very nice. So if someone wants to connect and follow along with you on your journey, which you have a great wee social media page going as well, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, we've on Instagram, it's Highland Harmony Farm, and then my email's the same, highlandharmonyfarm@gmail. And we got a website. It's highlandharmonyfarm.com. Yep. Any HHF related thing, I will respond. Absolutely. And I love all my new people I'm meeting. So bring it on. I'd love to meet you.
Awesome. Well, that's everyone's call to go and follow along and connect with Sadie. But thank you very much for hopping on today, Sadie. It's been great chatting to you and hearing a bit more about what you're up to and your journey. It's awesome.
Thank you.